All right,
some
let's try.
technical
Let,
connectivity.
Okay, let me try and introduce you once again and see if we can hear each other clearly so we can proceed with the interview. You are Director, Advocacy and Stakeholder Relations, Department of Employment and Labor at the head office in Pretoria. You are Dr. Pravine Naidoo, and you're here to talk to us about domestic employees being asked to file reports against underpaying employers. Would that be correct? Good morning, welcome.
Yes, Ms. Halley, that's correct. I am in the Inspections and Enforcement branch of the Department of Employment and Labor at head office in Pretoria. And there has been a legislation that has been passed in 2018 and operating with effect from the 1st of January 2019, and that is the National Minimum Wage Act. Now, the National Minimum Wage Act is a piece of legislation that sets the baseline for employers to pay their employees. And it's basically 3 years into operation, and the Minister of Employment and Labor, as of the 1st of March 2022, that's this year, has brought on domestic workers' salaries on par with the national minimum wage. So previously, they were paid below the legislated national minimum wage. But as from the 1st of March 2022, and as you have mentioned in your opening remarks, uh, domestic workers are now being paid, should be paid in terms of the National Minimum Wage Act at a rate of 23 rands 19 cents per hour.
Okay,
So that's
so
that's where we
clearly,
stand currently.
right. We seem to, from this article, the suggestion is that the majority of domestic workers are not paid the minimum wage, and your department is urging them to take the matter to the CCMA. Very sadly, I think a lot of the domestic workers are possibly not aware of their rights, or may be aware of their rights but too afraid to go to the CCMA because they may just lose their job, and they feel that they may not be employable in the future because should their prospective employer check up on reference check them, they might get a bad reference. So there's these type of issues that they're afraid of. What's government try? What role can government play in reassuring these most vulnerable of workers to say, stand up for your rights, we are here to protect you?
Okay. There's two parts to your question. So let me answer the first part with regards to what legal recourse do domestic workers have for non-compliance. And then secondly, I will speak about the issue of what the department is doing to ensure that employers comply with the legislation and the fear factor on the part of domestic workers of losing their jobs. Okay, so the first part, let me address the first part. In terms of the National Minimum Wage Act, any employee, for that matter, in any sector of the South African economy, who is being exploited or underpaid, or the employer is not complying with any of the labor laws that is applicable in the workplace, any employee, that's including domestic workers, can approach the CCMA or the Department of Employment and Labor through its various labor offices or labor centers that is in every city and every town across all 9 provinces in South Africa, and raise the matter with the staff of the Department of Labor or the CCMA. What would then happen is that the department's labor inspectors would go and investigate the matter with the particular employer to ascertain and determine the level of non-compliance uh, in that particular employment relationship or in that particular workplace. And there are penalties and there are compliance issues that is legislated. So any employee, including a domestic worker, has legal recourse against their employer for not complying with labor legislation. So, in, the road, the door is not closed to anyone. So that's the legal position. The issue of the the fear factor, that is a reality, because domestic workers do not want to lose their jobs, and especially in a domestic worker relationship, very often that domestic worker is part and parcel of that family environment. And if that relationship is soured between the employer and the employee, then it becomes very messy and sticky, and personality issues become the order of the day. So what we're trying to do is strike a balance. We do not want any domestic worker to lose the jobs, given the precarious situation that we are in the economy currently. But having said that, there should also be compliance to labor laws on the part of the employer. Now, this is where the Department of Employment and Labor comes in, and we are undertaking countrywide advocacy and stakeholder relations across the country to make employers aware of their obligations, as well as to make employees aware of their rights. So we have to balance rights and obligations. Obligations on the part of the employer, and rights that is to be enjoyed by the employees. And then we strike that balance. So we are undertaking various awareness sessions through television, radio, social media, uh, and other digital platforms and traditional platforms like seminars and workshops and information sessions throughout South Africa, to make domestic workers, in this particular context, domestic workers, aware of their rights, as well as make their employers aware of their obligations in terms of labor legislation. Having said that, the legal position, and secondly, the advocacy part. At the end of the day, what we are also advocating is that it is the right thing to do. Okay. So, in
Absolutely.
as much as we may have the laws and the legislation, but we are also advocating to employers that it's a win-win situation if you pay the national minimum wage to your domestic
Absolutely.
worker. And if you do that, it is the right thing to do. And that is what we are trying to promote in South Africa
Never mind the
currently.
never mind the right thing. I'd imagine it's the humane thing to do, because if not, if you're unpaying your domestic worker, you're actually exploiting them. And I think that's the mindset that one should apply. I'm going to give you two or three questions, and I'd like you to respond to them in any order that you'd like, and then we'll be wrapping up the interview. Uh, this issue around paying the national minimum wage is being circumvented, and this is a generalization, I know, but a lot of people circumvent this situation by employing foreign domestic workers, because then the assumption is that the foreigner won't take me to the CCMA because she or he may not be in the country legally. That's the one issue. Let's look at the issue around part-time workers, somebody that comes to you only twice a week because of affordability. You can only afford to, because you're paying the national minimum wage, you can only afford to have the worker with you for 2 or 3 days a week, and that is okay. That is okay. But under those circumstances, do you still have to pay UIF, your portion of the UIF, to cover that part-time worker? Dr. Naidu, did you get those questions? Dr. Naidu, let me repeat. The first question is, people to circumvent these situations, they employ immigrant labor, because then they believe that foreign labor won't take them to the CCMA if there is a problem. Question number two has to do with part-time domestic help. Are you still legally bound to pay UIF to your UIF portion for somebody that works for you only 2 or 3 times a week? Nope, there seems to be a problem with this interview. Dr. Pravine Naidoo is unable to hear me. I am so sorry. We're going to have to end the interview there and hopefully get him back another time. But I think you got a gist of what the interview was all about. We do need to pick up on this important uh, situation, or this important issue, on another program at another time. It is 9:45 exactly. News and views on Salam Media.